Hello everyone! Today I thought I would talk about a topic that I'm super excited and passionate about, namely fair fashion. I think it's a very relevant topic and a lot of people are interested in it, which is why I thought I would make a video and share my tips and experiences to make your transition into a more sustainable wardrobe easier and smoother. So my number one tip is keep what you already have. I know when you first learn about fast fashion and its detrimental impacts that your initial reaction is to just grab a garbage bag and throw all the dirty brands in there and dispose of them as fast as possible. But hold yourself there, because that would not be sustainable. Keep the things you already have as long as possible. Transitioning into a sustainable wardrobe is not replacing your existing wardrobe with all fair fashion and secondhand pieces only immediately. That would really not be the point, and that wouldn't be sustainable. So instead, just keep the things what you already have, make the most of them, keep loving them, and when time comes and you have to replace them, then it's a time where you can replace them with fair fashion items. My second tip is stop consuming for a while. When I first transitioned into a more sustainable wardrobe and I started reading and researching all about it, I challenged myself and I stopped consuming clothes. This really helped me, and I realized that I don't actually need to buy things in order to be happy. Nowadays, I think the media we're exposed to really tries to feed us with the belief that we need to own stuff in order to be happy. So just try it out yourself and just stop consuming for a while in order to notice that stuff doesn't make you happy. And you can just be happier, or even happier without constantly filling your empty spaces with stuff you anyways don't really need. So stop consuming in order to reshape your values and realize that you don't need those things. My third point is define your principles and values. I think it's really important, in order to have a shift in behavior, to have a shift in your attitude first. And in order to have this attitude shift, you really need to be clear about the reasons why you want to have a more sustainable wardrobe. You really should make your values and principles clear. You really need to know why you're actually doing it and have a reason. Because if you don't have one, you're probably not gonna be sticking with your behavior shift for a long time, and you will be prone to fall back to your old behavior patterns. So really find those reasons, maybe even write them down, and be clear about your reasons why you want to be more sustainable in your wardrobe. This also brings me to point 4, because in order to feed those reasons and have those reasons, it's really important that you inform yourself in an initial phase. So just inform yourself and research as much as possible about the topic of fast and fair fashion. Really get to know how the fast fashion system works nowadays and get your hands on information. At this point, I can really recommend you the movie The True Cost in case you haven't watched it already. For me, it was really an eye-opener, and it was really one of the reasons why I first got to transition into fair fashion and shopping more consciously. Other resources where you can learn more about these topics include, for example, the Fashion Revolution. Fashion Revolution is an association which really supports the cause of fair fashion and wants to stop the exploitation of people in the garment industry. They have a ton of resources online. They also have a magazine they frequently launch, which is really insightful, which has a lot of resources. And I really can recommend you warmly to just have a look into those information. My next tip would be shop simple and minimalistic designs. Because if you just shop things that are with crazy designs and crazy patterns and things that will go out of fashion quickly, those things are not really lasting a long time in your wardrobe. Your tastes are constantly changing, and you as a person are also evolving. So unless you've really found your style and you know that you will stick with that style for the years to come, I warmly recommend that you invest in more timeless pieces that will last a long time, and things that you will also still like in the future. Things that will just not be victims to your changing tastes. Also, at this point, I really want to highlight the principle of a capsule wardrobe, because simple pieces are really just way easier to combine into different and diverse outfits. And by buying more simple pieces, you also don't need that many different things in order to have many outfits. My point number 6 is, whenever you're confronted with the decision of buying something, ask yourself some simple questions first. First of all, ask yourself, do you really need that thing? Or maybe are you just buying that thing because you want to fill an empty gap inside you? Or maybe you're just bored. So ask yourself whether you're truly buying this because you really need this item and you've been wanting it for a long time, or whether it's just more an impulse buy that and you try to get instant gratification from it. So by asking you those simple questions, you will be really confronted and start reflecting more about the motives of your purchase behavior. And by asking those questions in your head, you will realize whether you really need those things or if you just think you need it. Another tip that I want to share with you to stop you from those impulse buys is create a wish list. So instead of shopping things that you feel like needing or that you feel like you want immediately, just put things on a list and let them on that list for a few weeks. And after a few weeks, come back to that list and see whether you still want those items or you still need those items. If you don't need them anymore, well, you don't gonna buy it. So by keeping a list, you really are less victim to impulsive buying, and it really helps you to track whether you really want those items and you really need them, or if it's just a case of unnecessary purchases. There's also a variety of online tools out there that allow you to create online wish lists where you can set those items on. But otherwise you can just do it manually on a piece of paper or also with an Excel list. My next point is borrow instead of buy. This especially is for more special occasion outfits. For example, if you go to weddings or if you go to any form of celebrations or a dinner party. Because those things, like those fancy dresses, are likely to be worn only once, and then they end up in the back of your closet and they end up never be worn again. So it doesn't always have to be a new dress. You can just go and ask around in your family and amongst your group of friends whether someone maybe already have something that you're looking for, and then you can just ask them if you can borrow it, and after wearing it you can bring it back. That's obviously way more sustainable for the environment, and also it helps you save money. Furthermore, I also really want to highlight the fact that you actually don't have to buy fair fashion in order to have a sustainable wardrobe. Secondhand clothing and vintage clothing are just as sustainable, if not more sustainable. And if you maybe don't have the money to invest in fair fashion, go buy secondhand instead. Of course, it's still really important that we help support the fair fashion industry, because only by supporting them, they really can compete with those fast fashion retailers. And by competing with them, they may end up pushing them out of the market. But still, as you may know, fair fashion might seem a little bit expensive, even though it's just a matter of our wrong beliefs about how expensive clothes has to be. And it's not really that they're too expensive, but rather it's that the fast fashion industry set our expectation or the price expectations so low that we perceive the prices of fair fashion garments so incredibly high. But what I want to say here is just go and check out your local thrift stores and vintage and secondhand stores. Check out flea markets, or also there's a ton of secondhand online marketplaces out there. One of my favorites, for example, is Depop, but you can also look at eBay. Another favorite of mine is ASOS Marketplace, because it's an online marketplace where you find secondhand stores from all over the world. This also has the advantage because some people might feel a bit overwhelmed when they first get into secondhand shopping, me included. I also felt like I didn't really get any oversight in what's on offer. And the advantage of online marketplaces is that you see everything nicely displayed and there's a clear overview of things, and it also often allows you to filter things so you can really focus on what you're looking for. Tip number 10 is be aware that also fair fashion brands, they do sales. By this, I also want to say, please don't just buy something when it's on sale because you feel like, oh, it's a good deal, and because you think like, oh, by just buying it, you finally own a fair fashion piece, even though you just don't really need that piece. But what I want to say is, in case you need a replacement of something or some more basics, keep an eye open for sales, because they also happen in the fair fashion industry, and they happen around the same time as the regular sales do. So if you really need something but you don't want to spend as much money on it, you can still shop items when they're on sale. Point number 11 is actually a recommendation. Namely, the app is called Good on You. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's an app that allows you to compare different brands, and it rates them according to their how ethical they are and how sustainable they are. Because I know from personal experience that especially when you first get into the topic of fair fashion, that it can be really overwhelming, and it's super hard to have an oversight and see which brands are truly sustainable and which brands are just pretending to be ethical and sustainable. It's a fact that fair fashion is really on the rise, and there's a lot of greenwashing out there. So brands that pretend that they're sustainable and just have a green marketing promoting to sustainable efforts, but they really are not sustainable. Some major clothing brands such as H&M, for example, brought out the conscious collection, and I just want to highlight here again that this is really not possible to have conscious and ethical produced clothing with such a low price tag, because how can you sell a t-shirt or for $11 and pay all your workers fairly and source all your resources sustainably but still have such a low price tag? That just simply doesn't cover the environmental costs and the wages or the fair wages of the workers. So just be really careful of what you invest your money in. And apps such as Good on You really help you to differentiate between the truly good, fair and sustainable brands and the brands that are not as sustainable as they pretend to be. Another tip I have for you is organize clothing swaps. So just get together with a group of friends and tell everyone to bring some old pieces of clothing that they don't really wear anymore. And by pairing it with a nice evening with some snacks, some good food and drinks, you can have a clothing swap party. You can just trade your clothes, and by that you can give your clothes a second life. It's a free way of getting into a more sustainable and fair wardrobe, and it's also really a fun experience and brings you closer to your friends. Another tip or recommendation I have is, once you need to dispose of your clothing, please don't put them in the clothing bins that say that they ship to third world countries. I really want to discourage you from doing that, because fact is that those clothes are not donated to the people in need. They're actually shipped to countries where they end up being sold to local textile traders. They're actually sold to them, and this really endangers the local textile industries. So because the local textile industries cannot keep up with the cheap prices of the secondhand clothing anymore, and it really endangers their business. So you may think you end up doing something good. It's actually has a flip side to it, and rather than donating them, I can encourage you to bring them into your secondhand stores, where you know they will be just resold and not shipped to third world countries where they endanger textile industry. Another tip I have is go and look into your mom's or grandmom's closet. I mean, it really depends what kind of style they have, but I actually ended up borrowing or owning now a lot of my mom's clothes that she no longer wears. We have a similar size, so we are lucky. I just love going through her closet and get some new things. Also, I ended up going through my grandma's closet because a lot of blouses and patterns that were in trend back then are really coming into fashion again. Also, this is not really a tip, but something I want to highlight. I've heard from so many people that they simply cannot afford fair fashion, which is why they don't want to transition into a fair and sustainable wardrobe. By that, I just want to say that, as I mentioned earlier, that our price expectations are set so wrong by the fast fashion industry. And if you really go and make the calculations and calculate in the environmental costs and the fair wages, then you really will notice that those prices or those higher prices are justified, and that in fact they're not too high, but the other prices are just way too low. I actually end up spending way less money since I've transitioned into a fair and sustainable wardrobe, because I hardly shop anymore. Like earlier, when I used to go on city trips, one of my major activities was to go shopping, and I ended up spending a lot of money through that. But now I actually spend my time otherwise. If you're aware of all the money that you save by not shopping random stuff, and you add those costs up, you will really see that you can save money if you shop more fair and sustainably. So yes, those were my tips, and I hope those tips were helpful to you and they help you transition into a more sustainable and fair wardrobe. Also, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. It was really nice that you were watching, and I wish you all a nice day. Bye!